Ahead on our news tonight, the wait continues for an official pathologist report into the deaths of 3 Americans at Sandals on Exuma. The Public Service Union says it's waiting on government to take action on issues, but not for much longer. And later, we've got reaction tonight as a sex offender is released. Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Kendino Knowles. 3 American tourists who died at Sandals Emerald Bay Resort earlier this month died from carbon monoxide poisoning, according to reporting by the Nassau Guardian. A pathologist report confirming as much was expected to be released today. The deceased were identified as 68-year-old Michael Phillips, 65-year-old Robbie Phillips from Tennessee, and 64-year-old Vincent Chiarella of Florida. Chiarella's wife, 65-year-old Donis Chiarella, who was found alive, was airlifted to New Providence for medical treatment, then transferred to a hospital in Florida. Officials say the couples were staying in separate villas next to each other in the same building at the resort. Police Commissioner Paul Roll telling our news he has yet to get the official report, but says it will be released once it is handed to him. This is a story that we are continuing to follow. For more on this, visit Our News Bahamas on Facebook. In other news tonight, with the Bahamas Public Services Union's 14-day deadline for government just days away, the union says it's gearing up to take action. Berthany McDermott reports.
Nearly 2 weeks after that 14-day ultimatum was issued to the Davis administration, Bahamas Public Service Union President Kingsley Ferguson said nothing has been done to address their concern. On May 12th, finance and accounting officers gathered at BPSU Hall on East Street South, calling on government to rectify outstanding promotions and reclassifications of over 250 employees.
There has been no discussions. Efforts were made to reach the Minister of State for the Public Service, as well as the substantive Minister of State for the Public Service and Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mitchell.
Following the union's press conference, State Minister for the Public Service, Pia Glover Rolls, said no group in the public service is favored over the other. She said the government is moving as quickly as it can once it receives the necessary recommendations from any ministry.
She is indeed correct, but the Minister of State should also be mindful that the issues concerning other public servants were not as long-standing as the issues relative to the finance and accounting officers and the court reporter situation, who have been in abeyance to some extent for about 15 to 20 years.
Now, Ferguson says the BPSU is concerned that the Davis administration is holding back on addressing long-standing issues, which the Prime Minister agreed to do when he signed that Memorandum of Understanding before taking office.
We're of the view that the government of the Bahamas is stalling. The budget contribution is fast approaching, and we are concerned that allocations have not already been made for whatever is going to be agreed to between the union and the government. The government that made an agreement with trade unions to address the outstanding concerns, who were aware of what the concerns were prior to taking office. Almost 9 months in, we cannot seem to get a resolve on anything.
Davis signed the Memorandum of Understanding back in August, just weeks before the general election, pledging to address key labor issues if elected. The BPSU president says the plan is to meet with the entire body Monday night. As for what the way forward could look like, Ferguson said this.
If it is necessary for the members to squeak, some people say the squeaky wheel gets the oil, then that determination will be made, and we will do what it is that is necessary in order for the issues that we have presented to get the responses that we're looking for.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
All right, thanks a lot, Berthany. Well, unanimous support by members of the Bahamas Union of Teachers to reject government's counter-proposal on salaries in a new industrial agreement. BUT President Belinda Wilson speaking with Our News on this issue just a moment ago.
First of all, I want to say thank you to the hundreds of teachers, guidance counselors, librarians, teachers' aides who attended the general membership meeting last week, Thursday, May the 19th, 2022. Based on your responses, you are aware that we unanimously rejected the government's salary counter proposal, and the deadline for a response from the government is Monday, May the 23rd, 2022 at 5:00 p.m. Our next general membership meeting is on Tuesday, May the 24th, 2022 at 4 p.m.
And we'll have more on that at Our News Bahamas on Facebook. It's time now for your first look at temperatures, and meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center with your latest look. Greg?
Thanks, Kendino, and welcome everybody for our first look on this Monday evening. Nice conditions outside, slightly warm, temperatures in the low 80s, 82 outside our studios, few clouds. We have a slight breeze out there. The winds are out of the southeast at 14 miles per hour, and you'll feel slight temperature. We'll call it a comfortable 84, factoring in the relative humidity. On our satellite, quiet across the islands, high pressure ridge in the Atlantic building across us. We did have some Saharan dust, but a dry air mass is invading our area. We're still seeing one or two small showers. We got one or two of those here in the capital. In that southeasterly breeze, we'll continue to see one or two more showers forecasted across the northwest and central parts of the Bahamas tonight through tomorrow. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is still to come.
All right, thanks a lot, Greg. Well, still to come on Our News, a local expert weighs in on the chance of a fifth COVID-19 wave. Residents have their say on the release of a convicted sex offender, plus what Buddy Hield is up to on the hardwood. That's coming up when Our News returns.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Shamik.
Relatives of a 55-year-old sex offender who was released from the Department of Corrections on Friday say he spent the majority of his adult life in prison. The man's release was just recently made public, with Minister of National Security Wayne Munro saying he is considered a risk to public safety. Jared Higgs tells us more.
Scott's relatives tell me his first stint in prison came at just 16 for murder. Since then, he's been back for armed robbery, rape, and indecent assault. Some residents of Strawn's Corner, which officials listed as his last known address, remember when the 55-year-old lived in the area.
He used to live around here when he was younger, like around about 16, 17. That's when he first used to get in problems like that. And he did some raped some people and he went to jail.
While announcing Strawn's release on Friday, National Security Minister Wayne Munro revealed that Scott's track record includes offences against a 9-year-old girl, a 17-year-old girl, and while in the correctional institution, behaviour towards adult females. Several of Scott's relatives, who I spoke to, described him as manipulative and suggested that he's been institutionalized after spending more than 30 years in prison. 20-year-old Eliana Madison has lived in the area for 13 years and is concerned to know about his ties to the neighborhood.
No, a lot of people have criminal offense, right? But I just don't think it's wise that they let a sex offender know, knowing that a lot of people have young children around.
Munro previously announced that the identity of sex offenders would not be released because those offenders could petition the courts to have their names removed if they face harassment. He's also previously expressed doubt that a sex offenders list would be effective, suggesting a more effective method would be tracking offenders electronically for 10 years after their release from prison. Another longtime resident of Strawn Corner, who's familiar with the sex offender, questioned whether he wanted to help himself.
Everybody deserves a second chance, but some people don't want a second chance, not even for themselves. Because they don't care to make a difference or a change.
Scott's most recent prison stint came after he pleaded guilty to indecently assaulting a 9-year-old girl. Prior to that, he served 6 years of a 9-year sentence for raping a 17-year-old. Munro has warned members of the public that if they harass Scott, it could lead to courts deciding against public notification of sex offenders. Most residents we spoke to want to be notified about offenders being released in their neighborhoods.
It's a good thing. Put up the list, man. Don't be ashamed, man. You know, come like save me and your children, you know. You all got kids, man, you know. Next 10 years, they can be women and men.
Easy is not run here. Because you have plenty of little children up and down through the street through the day. So you never know what will happen if you street.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
All right, thanks, Jared. Well, the number of positive COVID-19 cases in the country continues to climb, but could this signal a possible fifth wave? The chief medical officer at a leading healthcare facility sits down with our Megan Shepherd.
The daily COVID-19 dashboard confirming 29 new cases for May 22nd. According to Chief Medical Officer at Doctors Hospital, Dr. Sheena Antonio Colley, the private facility has seen an increase in patients with COVID as a secondary diagnosis. That means they presented hospital with other concerns and then test positive for COVID.
Those patients are not at this time requiring any treatment for COVID for the most part. Many of them don't even require oxygen therapy at this time unless it is for their secondary their primary diagnosis. It's less resource intensive, so it hasn't been pulling on our resources in terms of human resources or in terms of medications and treatments. Our Doctors Hospital West facility remains closed at this time because any patient who has COVID, we're able to facilitate them in our negative pressure and isolation areas in the main hospital.
Here's what you need to know about the current variant circulating in our community.
Definitely the symptoms are fairly similar to the Omicron in terms of the coughing, the fevers, the body aches, some nasal congestion, etc. What we found is that the patients who are more immunocompromised, the diabetics, hypertensives, patients with immunocompromising conditions such as HIV, cancer, etc., those patients tend to be a bit more sick. Once again, most of them will not require hospitalization.
In addition to this current variant being highly transmissible, Dr. Antonio Colley also attributes the current rise in cases to COVID fatigue. So, is a fifth wave possible?
Viruses mutate. It is within their nature to do so. So it's going to be hard for us to predict. I think it's our response to that's going to dictate how things are handled, whether we continue to be under pandemic watch. So I think it's the way we interact with the virus in our daily lives.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepherd.
And for more on that, be sure and visit Our News Bahamas on Facebook. And the Chief Medical Officer at Doctors Hospital, Dr. Sheena Antonio Colley, who you just heard from there in that report from Megan Shepherd, she confirms that doctors have seen an uptick in pediatric cases of COVID-19, the rise in cases leading to a 3-day sit-in at Gerald Cash Primary School recently. However, Education Minister Glenys Hanna-Martin confirming that schools will remain open despite the uptick. Dr. Antonio Colley has this advice for those schools.
Schools need to continue to be vigilant in keeping students in their bubbles and to just continue with the trajectory they were on as we came into the school year. Definitely, we are going into summer now, so that's going to be a different outlook when it comes to summer activities for the kids. But I think once again, vigilance and sensibility is going to be what's necessary to keep them safe.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
All right, when Our News comes back from the break, sweet beginnings for a new bar and lounge despite inflation.
Plus, coming up in sports, Buddy Hield back in town hosting a bunch of young kids as they try to get ready for AAU summer basketball. We'll also tell you some details from the Red Line track and field event and so much more just ahead in sports.
And when our news returns, temperatures heat up. Greg is back with the extended weather forecast.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Shamik.
This is our news. Welcome back. Buddy Hield hosting a tryout for local young hoop talent over the weekend. Meanwhile, track action in the Thomas A. Robinson Stadium. Here's Marcellus Hall.
All right, thanks a lot. Welcome to our Sports on a Monday, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall, Grand Bahama native and current Indiana Pacer. Buddy Hield back in town, or at least here in New Providence, hosting this past weekend a bit of a tryout for his upcoming AAU team, which will travel this coming summer. For more details, let's take a look. Bahamian NBA star Buddy Hield in town over the weekend. Buddy hosting his Buddy Buckets basketball tryouts at the AF Valley Gym, targeting boys ages 15 to 18 in an attempt to put together an AAU squad. Huge number of kids turning out, with the top 15 selected to be a member of his team. Of course, the event will also take place in Grand Bahama, Buddy's stomping grounds. And speaking of which, afterwards, he talked about not only the camp that day, but what he hopes to accomplish.
Well, the talent was good. We all started off from the bottom, so a lot of guys get a lot of work here to do with them. But I find some talent, and we should keep working them this summer and keep better and sharpening them skills. And as they come over with me in the summer, late June, we work with them and get them situated as quick as we can. And after that, play some AAU basketball.
On to some track and field news, where the Red Line Track and Field Classic took place this past weekend in honor of Sonia Knowles. The event over Saturday and Sunday, well attended, with athletes competing in all the various age groups. Taking a look here at the 200 meters, those were just some of the events on the day. B3A's president, Jamiko Archer, talking about the event itself and feeling pretty good about what he saw.
I'm impressed. I'm very happy to see such fierce competition, and even post-Carif that we're seeing competition at a very high level. Again, surprisingly, we've already seen personal best performances from some of our athletes. And I believe that a Saturday-Sunday event is quite novel in our environment, and I think that this is the trend to come.
And speaking of Grand Bahama, this past weekend in Grand Bahama, the Who Got Next Rev basketball tournament is continuing there, as once again Rev stepping forward in communities to try and promote the sport of basketball and also do a little bit of community outreach in the process. The event going off pretty well and will continue until they get to a champion.
Community and sports bring persons together, right? So we've actually been doing this for the past 6 weeks. We had 4 tournaments in New Providence. Last week we were in Eleuthera, and today we're in Grand Bahama. We're so excited of the feedback that we've gotten.
And that's your look at sports here on this Monday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Marcellus. Well, still to come on our news, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast, plus Flamingo at a new bar and lounge. We'll tell you where when our news returns.
Got size at 6'5". Hi, this is Shamik.
Welcome back to our news. It's time now for your extended weather forecast, and Greg is back in the Weather Center with a look at conditions for the week ahead. Greg?
Thanks again, Kendino, and welcome back, everybody, for our second look at weather. Remember, we were talking about watching the Southwest Caribbean for some potential development. Some residual moisture still hanging out down towards that area, but we had a bit of energy that moved into the Gulf of Mexico, an upper level trough. Combined with that, and we are watching that spin up across the southeastern United States. Well, actually, that was an area that the National Hurricane Center watched and gave it about a 10% chance for formation. Quickly moved into this Louisiana area last evening and fizzled out, but a lot of the energy still pulling out towards the north and east. If you notice, there's just a little bit of a spin, but quite a bit of activity with that. Gonna still watch the southern portion of that. Some more energy still in the Gulf of Mexico, not showing any real potential, but of course, as I mentioned last week, this is just before the start of the hurricane season, and May is normally a busy month for the last 6 years, where we've been watching for formation of tropical systems, and we will continue to watch that over the next couple of days. Across the area, Bahamas, sunshine, high pressure in charge, and will continue to dominate the weather for the next couple of days, and that high pressure will provide some gentle to moderate winds, east to southeast in the northwest Bahamas at 15 knots, seas 3 to 5 feet over the ocean. Your low tide will be at 9:37 tonight. Caution flag for the central and southeast Bahamas tonight through tomorrow. Your winds east to southeast at 15 to 20 knots. Your seas will be running 4 to 6 feet over the open waters. Here's a look now at your national forecast. Over the next couple of days, we're looking for some nice weather, but by the weekend, we expect an increase in some moisture, so we could see a couple more showers, and that should take us into next week. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night, everybody. Back to you, Kendino.
All right, thanks a lot, Greg. Well, a new business has opened, but not without challenges amid the ongoing pandemic. One of the partners dishes to our Sasha Lightbourne.
The same team that opened Bahamian Bistro during the pandemic just a little over a year ago has now opened another business, Flamingo's Bar and Lounge, located on Christie Street.
We want a space that is not so generic, a space that has character, has good vibes, good music, a place where people can feel comfortable. And that's essentially the experience we're trying to create here.
Part owner Jamal Stubbs says opening the new business, which sits right on the side of Bahamian Bistro, was a little easier to open than Bahamian Bistro.
The good thing is with Bistro, obviously opening that in the pandemic, that was a lot of challenges. I would say that was slightly harder because you had a lot more moving parts. We put quite a bit of work in terms of renovating the space. But in terms of opening, opening this with an existing business, the good thing is with our partnership, is 3 partners, and we have a strong team. I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was better than Bistro.
Stubbs also spoke to inflation and how it affects both businesses, noting they are doing their best to manage as best as possible.
One part, you're facing price increases, and the second part, some phases you don't even have the product. So you have to do a lot of, searching, and your main supplier doesn't have it, so you have to then go to find someone else, and obviously when you find someone else, the price is not the best, right? Particularly in this particular business with alcohol, right? So you may have obviously trade pricing with the dealers, but then the dealers don't have it, then you have to go then to the third party, and then obviously at that point in time you're paying market price.
Now Stubbs says COVID protocols are being enforced here. There are physical security guards to manage the crowd. The tables are socially distant, as well as sanitizers are in place. Flamingos is open from Thursdays to Sundays. Reporting for our news, I'm Sasha Lightbourne.
All right, thanks a lot, Sasha, and thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Kendino Knowles. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night, and until then, have a wonderful evening.